What do we look for in a role model, and how can we hope or aspire to become one ourselves? When we think about role models, we may think about someone who may be better at a particular thing, someone who might have a better physique, someone who has a better standing in life. For some, it might be an older sibling, a parent, um, a higher up, or maybe even a celebrity. And when we think about role models, it's good to wonder what we see in them, what we may wish we had in ourselves, or what we may hope to someday have in ourselves. I think talking and wondering about role models is important because we're in a time where it can feel or seem increasingly difficult to single out the authentic from the inauthentic, and having that role model can serve not only as inspiration but also as motivation to, I suppose, put an effort toward bettering yourself so that you may one day not necessarily call yourself a role model, but hope to be a role model in the eyes of others. And that's something I thought about quite a bit because as someone with an older brother, I'd say that my older brother is definitely my role model. And he's one of the few role models I have seen and held on to just because of how much he's shaped me. And when we think about the people that shape us, we think about not only how they've shaped us, but maybe also why they've shaped us. And I feel that it's really easy to look at others and say, oh, they're not worthy of being a role model, or, oh, because of this, I wouldn't look up to them if I were someone else. And I feel that it's really easy to look at someone and judge, to say, oh, because of this, I would never look up to this person. Um, like, oh, because they act this way, or because they dress like this, like, I would never look up to them. But that's a really detrimental mindset, and that's something to be wary of. And that's definitely something I've struggled with myself. Um, I feel that I'm still struggling to understand why, but growing up, I feel that because I would call myself an observant person, because I observe others and their behavior and the things they say and how they act, all those things, I feel that I've been better able to discern things that I don't like from the things that I think are admirable. And because of that, I've been really picky when it comes to, who I hang around with, who I look up to, and I'm not saying that's an entirely bad thing, but it's also not entirely a good thing. There are definitely caveats to be wary of. Like, for example, although I can look at someone and see their flaws, I also try to see their good qualities or something that I admire in them. And I feel that that's something I haven't been able to appreciate or, I suppose, enact until somewhat recently because I spent a great part of, adolescence, like growing up, focusing solely on the negative. And I know it can be really difficult to focus on anything but the negative, but I feel that when you start to shift toward the positive, when you start to look at someone and say, oh, like, I really like the outfit they're wearing, I really like their shoes, I really like their hairstyle, focusing on those things instead of the negative characteristics makes living easier. It not only teaches you to view others as, fellow human beings, but also inspires you to be better. For example, if I'm out and I'm walking around and I see someone whose outfit I really like, I think to myself, oh, like, I wish I had that guy's style. Not because I'm jealous, not out of envy. You should never do anything out of envy. You should never do anything out of envy, but rather out of an internal desire to better yourself. And I feel that when I see someone else who might have something I want to possess, I try to remind myself that instead of, wishing I had that thing or thinking that that person doesn't deserve it, I try to focus on how I can better myself to maybe one day be in a position where I can have that thing, you know? Um, I think it's so important to not only look for authentic, genuine role models, but also take steps toward becoming one yourself. Because if you're someone who feels as if they don't have a role model, that's totally understandable. And not having a role model can be very discouraging. Not having anyone to look up to. Not having anyone to be inspired by. So the search for a role model can be difficult, but if you do find someone that you can look up to in at least one aspect of life, then that's a good starting point. You don't have to admire everything they do or how they behave or how they speak entirely, but if you can find one positive aspect of them, that person, and maybe want to replicate that, maybe want to imitate that, I think that's a good starting point to shift from a negative mindset into a more positive one where you not only focus on the negative, but start to focus on the positive. And I think that is something that has greatly benefited my mental health, at least somewhat recently. Instead of saying, oh, that person, maybe that person would never want to be friends with me, or oh, that person is probably judging me right now. I look at them and say, oh, I like that person's style, I like that person's haircut, I like their glasses, anything like that. And focusing on that can have a very beneficial impact on not only your mental health, but I suppose your sense of determination and motivation, you know? It can not only serve as a point at which you can try to shift your mindset around, but also as a source of inspiration. And I wouldn't want to say capitalizing on it, but understanding that and trying to implement it can be greatly beneficial, like I already said. I also wanted to talk a little more about stagnancy, as I talked a little bit about in my previous video. And I feel that it goes hand in hand with, that kind of stagnancy, right? Because I remember a point in my life where I was thinking all these negative thoughts. I was thinking, oh, I'll never have someone to look up to, and I'll never become the person I want to be. But I think what helped me was not only what I've already discussed about trying to focus on the positive, but also just, not necessarily trying to shut out all the negative thoughts, but recognizing that there's something you want to change, and not only want, but need to change for yourself and for the people around you. I'd say when it comes to stagnancy, you shouldn't ask yourself if your life would be easier if it never existed, if you never knew about it, but rather how you can use it to your advantage, As someone who has struggled with stagnancy, I look back and I don't wish that I never went through that, but rather I view it as a point in my life where I understood that something had to change. And so, as slow as it might have been, as much as I might have struggled to overcome that point in my life, I feel that because I have overcome it, I have now been able to focus more on the positive, and that's something that has definitely helped me out. On that same topic, thinking about things, like stagnancy, for example, thinking about the term or the very concept, it can be easy to wish that you never knew it existed, right? It can be easy to wonder what the world would be like if these terms, the terms themselves, never existed, because they're concepts, right? They take space in our minds and we're thinking about them sometimes constantly, like stagnancy, like suffering, like depression. It can be easy to wonder what the world would be like if those terms, the terms themselves, not the state, but the terms themselves, never existed. If we didn't have to think about them sometimes every single day throughout most of the day. But as I already mentioned, view it not as something you wish didn't exist, but as something you can recognize and build upon and take advantage of to better yourself and to better not only for yourself but also for others, as I already said. Um, it can be easy to be consumed by those things. It can be easy to remain complacent in the cycle you've gotten so comfortable in. It can be easy to think about all the things you need to do and just brush them off and, just keep laying in bed or just keep scrolling on your phone. It can be extremely easy to do those things, and that's what we're comfortable with, right? That's what we've gotten used to. But, like I said in my previous video, you don't have to have a mindset shift overnight. You can start trying to take those steps toward recognizing it and using it to your advantage to better yourself. And like I already mentioned, one of the ways you can do those things is by focusing less on the negative and shifting toward the positive, right? You don't have to love everyone completely, but focusing on something that you do love about them can greatly benefit you. I feel that viewing humans and being observant about their behavior, actions, and words is something that has done more harm than good for me throughout most of my, upbringing. I feel that observing these things has exposed me to things that I wouldn't say I'd rather not be exposed to. Like, I'm talking about like natural human processes. Viewing those things in a negative light, which I did for many years, was deeply detrimental, and it was only until I started actively trying to focus on the positive that those things changed. Now, although I may struggle with it a little bit, now I feel like it's easier for me to accept and to praise, right? Because at first I was like, oh, you know, I'm glad I'm not like them. But now, it's easier to praise. And that mindset shift can change a lot of things. So yeah. As you're looking for a role model, attempt to be one yourself for those around you. Recognize that, you might want to change how you think. You might want to change how you view things. Recognize that and take small steps toward changing that to better yourself. To accept the thoughts that come into your head. As you're searching for a role model, be a role model for those around you. That's something that can be deeply motivating. I have a friend. I have a friend who is a role model for everyone around him, and seeing that has inspired me to want to become one myself. And so yeah, as you're searching for a role model, be one yourself. You might be wondering how to be a role model, and I'm not saying you have to be perfect in everything you do. That's also something I've struggled with, perfection. You don't have to be perfect in everything you do, but excel in at least one thing, and that's enough for you to be a role model. Whether it be your studies, your work, if you're a hard worker, that's admirable. If you're a high achieving student, that's admirable. Even if you make a great cup of coffee, that's admirable. Focus on how you can improve yourself to be a role model to those around you. It doesn't have to be something grand. Like I said, if you make a killer cup of coffee, that's admirable. And remind yourself of that, And if you can't find a role model, that's okay too. Just be your own role model, Easier said than done, of course. But like I said, focus on the positive. Focus on the things you know you're good at. Focus on how you could help others, Focus on how doing this or improving on this or being the best you can at this can help others, can inspire others, can motivate others. Yeah. although it can be extremely difficult to break out of that stagnancy, out of that cycle. Look to someone you look up to, and look at yourself. And I'm not saying you have to be like that person. Be your own person, of course. But look at how, maybe look at the thing you admire most about them, and maybe look at yourself and think about something you admire about yourself, no matter how small it may be. And think, oh, although I'm not the person I might want to be, these are the things that I admire about myself and that I would like to continue to improve upon so that one day I can consider myself a role model to those around me, even though you might not know it. Like I myself, like I mentioned, I would like to be a role model, and although I don't know it, it's still good to want to be that, It's motivating. So yeah. Continue to be the best you can be until you can be the role model you'd like to be.